She's with someone else right now, and the part that hurts most isn't losing her. It's the feeling that you suddenly became invisible, replaceable, erased. Take a breath with me because I need you to hear this clearly before your emotions hijack your judgment. I'm speaking to you not as an enemy of desire, not as someone here to shame you, but as a psychologist who has watched thousands of men destroy their future because they reacted instead of responding. What you do right now will either quietly rebuild your power or lock you into a cycle of regret you'll carry for years. When a man learns that the woman he wants is with someone else, his nervous system goes into survival mode. Your chest tightens, your mind starts racing through memories, you replay conversations, moments, mistakes. You start asking the most dangerous question of all, what does he have that I don't? That question alone can undo your self-worth if you let it, because the truth you were never taught is this. Attraction does not operate on fairness, logic, or moral reward. It operates on emotional positioning, and right now your position matters more than your feelings. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. When she chose someone else, it wasn't a global verdict on your value as a man. It was a local decision made inside a specific emotional moment, shaped by timing, context, and her internal state. Men tend to personalize this as a permanent failure. Women rarely experience it that way. That gap in perception is where most men lose control. They chase closure, they over-explain, they try to prove their worth, and every one of those reactions quietly lowers their psychological leverage. I need you to understand something that may sting at first. The man who begs for clarity, reassurance, or just one honest conversation is not seen as loyal or deep in that moment. He is seen as emotionally unsafe, not because he cares, but because he has handed over his emotional center. Attraction cannot survive where emotional self-containment disappears. This isn't cruelty. It's biology and psychology intersecting in real time. Right now, your instincts might be screaming to act, to send a message, to remind her of what you shared, to warn her, to compete, to disappear dramatically so she'll notice. All of those impulses come from the same place, fear of replacement. And fear is the one emotion that never restores attraction. It only exposes dependency. What changes everything for you starts with restraint, not silence as a tactic, not withdrawal as punishment, but grounded stillness. The kind that says, I can feel this pain without letting it dictate my behavior. This is where real masculine power begins, and it has nothing to do with dominance or control. It has everything to do with emotional sovereignty. From her perspective, whether she admits it or not, she is watching how you handle disappointment. Women are acutely sensitive to how a man regulates himself under loss. It signals future safety, leadership, and maturity far more than charm ever could. A man who collapses under emotional pressure communicates that he will also collapse under life pressure. A man who steadies himself communicates strength without saying a word. So if she's with someone else, the first move is not outward, it's inward. You stop auditioning. You stop narrating your pain to her. You stop negotiating for relevance. Not because she doesn't matter, but because you do. And the moment you remember that, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. In you first, and eventually in how others respond to you. Now listen carefully, because this is where most men get it wrong in a way that costs them years of emotional momentum. When she's with someone else, your silence, your distance, your composure are not about making her miss you. That outcome is secondary and unpredictable. What matters first is what happens inside you when you stop chasing emotional validation. This is where identity is either rebuilt or slowly eroded. There's a psychological law at play here that few men are ever taught. The more you attempt to secure certainty from another person, the more uncertain you feel inside yourself. And uncertainty is exhausting. It makes you obsessive, it makes you reactive, it makes you imagine scenarios that haven't happened and wounds that haven't healed. The male mind under emotional stress seeks resolution, but attraction does not reward urgency. It responds to self-direction. As a psychologist, I've watched men confuse doing nothing with giving up. They are not the same. Giving up is resignation. Grounded restraint is self-respect in motion. One collapses your sense of agency. The other restores it. When you stop centering her choices as the definition of your worth, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. You sleep differently. You think more clearly. You stop scanning your phone for signals. That internal shift alone changes how you show up everywhere else in your life. Here's another truth that may feel uncomfortable. When a woman sees that her presence or absence does not destabilize you, it forces a reevaluation. Not because she suddenly wants you back, but because you are no longer predictable. Predictability is comforting, but it is not attractive when it comes from emotional dependence. A man who can absorb disappointment without self-abandonment becomes psychologically distinct. He stops blending into the background of men who want something from me. This is also where ego traps appear. Some men attempt to improve themselves loudly. They post more. They signal success. They try to look unbothered while being deeply bothered. That performance is transparent. Real growth is quiet. It happens when no one is watching. It happens when you redirect your energy into competence, structure, and discipline, not as a display, but as a stabilizer. The goal is not to impress her. The goal is to restore internal order. You must also understand this. When she chose someone else, she entered a new emotional system. That system will have its own friction, its own flaws, its own disappointments. Human beings rarely move from one connection to another without carrying unresolved patterns. If you remain emotionally centered, you do not need to interfere. Time and reality do their work without your involvement. Your power is in not contaminating your image with desperation or bitterness. And let me be very clear here because this matters for your dignity. Do not become hostile. Do not become cold. Do not become performatively indifferent. Those are still reactions. Emotional maturity is neutral warmth combined with distance. If you interact at all, you are calm, brief, and respectful. You do not ask questions designed to soothe your anxiety. You do not seek reassurance. You communicate that you are anchored in yourself. This phase is not about waiting. It's about building a life that no longer pauses for someone else's decision. The man who does this unintentionally becomes rare, not because he manipulates, but because he refuses to collapse. And that refusal is felt, even from a distance. So here's what changes everything. When she is with someone else and you do not emotionally chase, you reclaim authorship over your narrative. You stop being the man reacting to her life and become the man directing his own. That shift alone is powerful enough to alter how you are perceived, by her, by others, and most importantly, by yourself. Here's where the story takes a turn most men never anticipate. The moment you stop centering her, you begin to see her more clearly. Not as the idealized figure your longing created, but as a human being with limits, contradictions, and unresolved needs. Emotional distance doesn't numb you, it sharpens you. And clarity is the real upgrade you were denied while you were emotionally attached. When men are emotionally invested, they often confuse intensity with intimacy. They feel deeply, so they assume the connection was deeper than it actually was. But emotional depth is not measured by how much you felt. It's measured by how consistently two people chose each other under pressure. If she chose someone else, that doesn't make her cruel or shallow. It simply reveals a boundary. And boundaries, when accepted, restore self-respect faster than any confrontation ever could. As a psychologist, I want you to understand what happens internally for a woman when a man she expected to unravel doesn't. There is a subtle cognitive dissonance that appears, not regret, not longing at first, but curiosity. The story she unconsciously told herself about you no longer fits your behavior. You are no longer the man waiting in the wings, emotionally available on demand. You've exited the emotional holding pattern. That alone alters the emotional landscape. But this is not where you start fantasizing about outcomes. This is where discipline matters. Because the real risk now is hope disguised as patience. Hope that she'll realize. Hope that she'll compare. Hope that she'll come back. That hope can quietly pull you back into orbit. And orbiting is still a loss of center. The goal is not to be chosen again. The goal is to become unshakable in your own selection of self. There's something else happening beneath the surface. When you stop fighting reality, your body releases tension it's been holding. Your posture changes, your voice steadies, you stop over-explaining yourself in conversations. You become less available for emotional chaos. People respond to this version of you differently, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer trying to be approved. This is also where men often ask, should I date other women now? And the answer depends on your honesty. If you're dating to distract, you're still avoiding the work. If you're dating from a place of curiosity, openness, and grounded presence, it can be healthy. The difference is subtle but important. One is escape. the other is expansion. Women can feel that difference instantly, even if they can't articulate it. Understand this deeply. You do not need to prove that you're desirable. Desire is a byproduct of self-alignment, not a performance. The man who is comfortable walking away from what no longer chooses him becomes magnetic without effort. Not because he is indifferent, but because he is integrated. His emotions are present, but they are not in control. If she ever reappears emotionally, and sometimes she does, your response is calm curiosity, not relief. You do not resume the old dynamic. You observe whether her actions align with consistency, respect, and clarity. Words don't rebuild trust. Patterns do. And if they aren't there, you don't argue. You simply continue forward. This is the part most men miss. Even if she never comes back, you've already won something far more valuable. You've learned that your stability does not depend on someone else's choice. That realization permanently alters how you move through relationships. You stop clinging. You start choosing. And once a man internalizes that, he is never truly replaceable again, because he no longer tries to be. Let's bring this home, because this is the moment where everything either integrates or fades into another video you nodded along to and forgot. If she's with someone else, the real question was never, how do I get her back? The real question is, who do I become when life doesn't go the way I wanted? That answer shapes every relationship you'll ever have from this point forward. Most men believe their confidence comes from being chosen. In reality, confidence is built when you choose yourself under emotional pressure, when you refuse to beg for clarity, when you refuse to compete for affection, when you refuse to shrink your dignity just to stay connected. That refusal rewires your self-image at a level deeper than motivation ever could. Here's the psychological shift I want you to notice. When you stop chasing someone who is chosen elsewhere, your standards rise naturally. Not as rules written on paper, but as felt boundaries in your body. You become less tolerant of mixed signals, less impressed by charm without consistency, less willing to invest in people who are unsure about you. This isn't bitterness, this is calibration. And something else happens that men rarely talk about. You become safer with yourself. You learn that you can feel loss without self-destruction. You can feel disappointment without panic. You can feel desire without dependency. That emotional resilience is what mature attraction is built on. It's what allows love to deepen instead of destabilize you. If she ever sees you again, she will not be evaluating your words. She will be sensing your center. Women are highly attuned to whether a man's emotional energy is clean or contaminated with resentment, hope, or hidden agendas. A man who has processed his loss and moved forward radiates a quiet authority. Not loud, not arrogant, just grounded. That energy doesn't chase, it invites. But this video was never about her coming back. It was about you coming back to yourself. Because the truth is, the man you become after loss determines the quality of love you are capable of receiving. If you let this experience harden you, you'll attract defensiveness. If you let it humble and strengthen you, you'll attract depth. So here's the equation I want you to sit with, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments. When she chose someone else, did it make you smaller? Or did it force you to grow into someone stronger? Write your answer below. One sentence. No explanations. Just the truth. If this video helped you see your situation with clearer eyes, like the video so more men who are silently struggling can find it. Subscribe if you want psychology-based guidance that doesn't sugarcoat reality. And share this with one friend who's hurting right now and doesn't know how to hold himself together. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is choosing yourself when no one else does.